What do you see as the critical responsibilities of a brand manager?
Sure. So in most firms, a brand manager is really there to develop the strategy for the brand that will maximize value for the firm. I think in its simplest terms, that's really what it has to do. Every brand needs a strategy. It could be a strategy around growth. It could be a strategy around profitability. The brand manager has to really determine that and make that strategy happen within the organization. So I think in its simplest, that's really what it's about.
What criteria do you set when you're hiring for brand manager positions?
Yeah, I think that it's interesting. I think this has evolved a bit over time. I think really what you're looking for is somebody who, who has strategic thinking ability, for sure. There's a certain amount of analytical rigor that you also need, but that typically isn't really what differentiates the good from the bad. That's kind of the basics. More and more, I think it's about interpersonal skills. There's a softer side to this business that I think is becoming more and more important as the business becomes more complex. So really people who can build relationships across a lot of different functions. And in today's world, that extends internationally and globally. So really maximizing relationships and making those work in complex organizations is more and more really what people are seeing as the big issue.
Many brand manager positions focus on domestic markets, but how do those criteria change when you're hiring for regional markets like Latin America and Europe, or even for global brand manager positions?
I mean, I think over the last certainly 10 years, maybe even 15 years, the development of global brand management has been the biggest change. That's been the big thing that everyone has really wrestled with, whether you're P&G or Pepsi or Apple Computer. This is a burning issue for everybody. But typically careers start off in domestic brand management, and that makes sense. As a young professional, you really need to get your hands around a business at its most simple. So you need to get those core skills. You need to get the experience base worked up. You need to fail. You need to succeed. And a local marketing job, a local brand management job is really where it all begins. Having had experience there, that's when more and more people are working either to go into another domestic experience, but in a new country. Yeah. So an American might move to China and have a domestic experience there, or people will move from there into global roles. And really they're kind of cousins. They're definitely related in terms of the activities, but the focus areas are different. Local roles tend to be more short-term in focus. You're looking at sales this week, sales next month. An annual business plan becomes the focal point. In global roles, you're tending to look much longer. You won't be worrying about the work that goes out to your customer next week. You'll be worried about the new product that needs to be ready 2 or 3 years, or maybe 5 or 6 years down the road.
What are the key additional skills you're looking for when you're hiring for a global brand manager position versus a domestic brand manager position?
I think this is really where, and I probably should have mentioned it earlier, one of the things that has become critically important today versus 20 years ago when I started was being able to lead through influence rather than direct authority. I think when I started off in the business, brand management was being the boss, and it was the person who got to make lots of decisions and be a focal point for a brand, and that was quite attractive for many people, for me certainly. But really, once you start to work in those global areas, you aren't the boss. Your title sounds like you're the boss, but typically your budgets are, fraction of what they would be in market. Your man management resource would be a fraction of what it would be in a local market. So, for perspective, today I have a team of over 100 in a U.S. role. When I was doing a global role, I had a team of 7 or 8. So really what you're asked to do is to use your brain to influence people in your experience, rather than the force of kind of command or kind of overt power or budget. So influencing skills absolutely are the big asset.